Hello, climbers, and welcome to Climbing Mount CMMC. Back to the basics.
Good job.
Where is it going? Look, sky.
Hello, climbers, and welcome back to another episode of Climbing Mount CMMC, the podcast. My name is Kaleigh Floyd, and this is Bobby Guerra, and we are your hosts for Climbing Mount CMMC. Today, we are joined by the one, the only Mr. Lawrence. Sir, thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have a competitor next to us.
Yeah. It is fantastic to be part of it. Like to finally be on the podcast rather than just watch the podcast.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge fan of you, man, and your team.
Yes.
Mad respect for what you guys are doing in the industry, even though you're an evil empire trying to take over the CMC ecosystem. I'm just kidding. No, we're really good friends for those that may not know, although we are technically competitors. Like, I mean, the ecosystem needs, I don't know, several thousand MSPs to step into this space, wouldn't you say? I mean, they are.
I mean, the last time I looked at the target addressable market, it was around 109,000 businesses that were in the ecosystem. And if we look at about 85% of those use an MSP of some form. So I think there's plenty of work to go around.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't even account for the subs that are going to be dropping down from those. So take that by 2, 3, 4, 5x. No one knows for sure what that number is going to be exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, we've been working for years in the market. I don't think we've ever run into you in a bid situation. Maybe I can't remember. Have we ever run into them?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's just, that's how large the ecosystem is. And there's just not many MSPs are doing it. So I ran into you in a conference. I'm like, dude, this is hard, isn't it? And you're like, yes, it is. And then we just kind of bonded over the commiseration of how difficult CMMC is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so Lawrence, do you want to go ahead and just set the stage and share with the people that are listening who you are, what your company does? I know we share a little bit that we're competitors, but if you want to go ahead and share what you guys do.
Yeah, I would love to. Again, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's fantastic to be here. And I think the fact that we are here together does just kind of demonstrate the fact that the ecosystem is big and there's it's a big tent. There's a lot of room for a lot of us, and there's a lot of subspecialties. So with that said, again, my name is Lawrence Cruciana. I am a lead CCA. I'm the president and founder of Corporate Information Technologies, Corp Infotech. We are almost 30 years in business now. We've always worked inside of regulated industries, from financial services, defense, and energy, working mostly with regulated upper end of small and mid-market organizations that are in high consequence environments. So CMMC was a natural, kind of a natural fit for us. I'd like to say that the genesis of the business, like our story arc and all of the things that we went through getting to where we were, that CMMC has been kind of a natural conclusion. We, very similar to Axiom, were one of the first to go through CMMC Level 2 certification. I like to say that we had first mover disadvantage. And so here we are. We just went through, just celebrated our first year in January. So first year in certification. So kind of right alongside. Both of us are very early into this game.
We both got our level 2s in January. I think we were kind of comparing, like, when's your schedule?
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it was like in a couple of days. Yeah.
It's like, who's going to beat the raid boss first, And I think technically, we did. I mean, nobody's keeping score, but if we would, it would have been us. Just saying.
And now he's going to leave, just like that.
And I'm going to go
on the episode.
Honestly, I wasn't even keeping score. The fact that we got to the other side of it and
Thank God,
successfully, and it didn't completely tear the business apart. I was thoroughly happy for.
Oh yeah, I've said it numerous times. I'm not afraid to say it. I literally cried after we finished because it was just so stressful and just because it was. We changed our whole business direction over the course of 2 years. This was the culmination of so much dedication and hard work to get our level 2. And what was really interesting is the moment after we passed, that night, we were like, okay, we got to take this and replicate it to our clients.
Right.
And, that's next. It's we kind of high five and then it's get back to the war. We just won a battle, but we did not win the war. Let's get these clients through it next. And that was let's get back to it. It was really interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's and I think the point I'll foot stomp on that is we had the same thing where like it was almost anticlimactic, right? Like it was we got
It's
the
weird, isn't it?
last met and then it's like okay, and next day had the certification, right? Had the result, and we had the exact same takeaway. Like we're gonna have to do the same thing like 10,000 times. Wow,
Sobering.
Yeah.
it is sobering. It is
Yeah.
sobering.
Yeah.
And so, with hearing that, if you guys are MSPs that are listening to this, now that you've heard the fear of that, let's talk about what we're talking. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So, not to scare you, but now let's talk about that today. No, what we do truly want to talk about what we're calling the game of chicken. And it would be wrong of me, I feel like, not to plug something that we're going to do in the future as well here at the beginning of this episode, which is we're going to be at PAX 8 Beyond soon in
Weird.
June.
Yeah,
All of us.
All of us.
You too, Lawrence.
Yes,
that's
with
right.
Andy from Sentinel Blue, right? And so,
Another
all
competitor.
another
Right.
competitor. Yeah, and I don't know why we keep doing that. No, I'm just kidding. So what we're going to be talking about there is actually, and I'll tag what we're going to title it, which is "You Can't Be Half Pregnant" in CMMC. So I'm sure that is an intriguing title to some of you, but we are going to be talking about it from the MSP perspective there. So if you are an MSP listening to that, you're going to be coming, please join us there. We'd love to see you. We'd love to connect. Today, we're going to be talking about it kind of from a different perspective as the OSC and somebody that has an external service provider that is, an MSP of some kind. And the game of chicken of deciding between let's say you have a current MSP that you're working with right now that is not CMMC Level 2 certified, maybe is not aware of the CMMC space, but is willing to work with you, or maybe you haven't talked to them about it yet, which if you haven't, please talk to them now about it. Or the other option, which is to go with somebody new, which we want to, share. We know that that's scary. It's scary to switch service providers that you're maybe, especially if you've had them for like 20 years, many
And
years. You have
and
a
so your
relationship with
perspective, I
them.
guess, just to clarify, is that the chicken that's being played is the person that has to get certified, which path they're going to pick, and
Yeah.
whether they want to make that decision like definitively.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I find that OSCs go, I don't like this decision, so I'm just not going to make it right now.
Yeah, that's.
You know?
I was
Right.
going to say the same thing. That's exactly what I've seen, because it is like I mean, Kayla, I want to kind of chime in there because like
Yes.
it is. It's a scary decision, and many MSPs. I mean, I know personally many friends that are in the MSP business that they do have those multi-decade relationships with their clients. I mean, their kids literally grew up together.
Right.
That's a big change.
Mhm. And so, also to say, just because an MSP doesn't know everything about CMMC doesn't make them a bad MSP, and
Right.
No.
Right.
we can say now on this call, even with talking, previously at the beginning of this call, we talked about how difficult it was for both of you guys to go through this, how scary it was. So, we acknowledge that choosing this as an MSP to move forward and push clients through this process is very difficult for an MSP to do. So, in no way are we saying that if an MSP doesn't know all this there is to know about CMMC and has a whole process, that they're a bad MSP. They're not.
Oh, and there are multiple MSPs I look up to that don't do CMMC that I'm learned lessons from, that I have
Right.
deep, passionate respect for the type of people they are, how they run their business. I'm in a peer group. I know that you are in multiple peer groups, Lawrence. And, when I go to tell some of my fellow brethren in the MSP industry, like what we do, we'll go to conferences sometimes and sit at tables and talk with people, and they'll look at us and go, you guys are crazy. Like, why would you put yourself and your team through this when you can be very profitable just running a traditional MSP where you don't have almost like cross-examination attorney like coming at you, assessor that's going to be like, you failed, and you're doing it right in front of the client. Like the client gets to see you either be their greatest hero or their boat anchor that they absolutely hate at that moment and want to murder because maybe you might have been responsible for them getting a not met in their assessment. So it's a really big deal, but it doesn't make us better. It just makes us different.
Different.
Yeah.
But what I would say that the CMMC system requires a high operational maturity in order for you to pull it off because of the complexity of the details that have to be required, because almost doesn't get it. And there's so many traditional MSPs that almost is good enough
Yeah.
for the relationship with the client. But for CMMC, that doesn't cut it. You literally have to be, you have to get a perfect score. What test have you ever taken that's like the only way you pass is to get 100%?
Right. And it's not an inexpensive test to
No.
take, right?
Or fail.
Right. Not just the dollars. I mean, everyone gets caught up in the dollars, but it is so operationally burdensome. Right. It is disruptive to everyone. And I've heard this, the CMMC space, be referred to, with analogies to like HIPAA. Right. And the process with the BAA and all of this. And now it's different. Right. I mean, like, this is not just sign a BAA and do a few things. The level of nuance, the level of detail, the continuous compliance. And frankly, I mean, I don't know about you, Bobby, but I can say experience in the MSP space, CMMC is the exact opposite of what makes a really good, highly efficient, operationally mature MSP good at what they do.
Right.
CMMC is like, let's just take that and flip it on its head.
Punt you back to the Stone Age. Because I mean, I grew up in the traditional MSP space. You were more coming from cleared facilities that you were servicing, so you were really more into the nitty gritty early on before us, and so we cut our teeth for 15 years, doing traditional MSP space. And that's what we knew. And you would just walk the hall every year and look for the best vendors that you would think would help you solve your AV problems or whatever. And then you would just swap them and it was cool.
It was easy. Yeah.
It was easy, and if you try to do that with CMMC, there's no way you could pull that off. The documentation is different. You have to you go through change control processes. I mean, so when we go through the vendor halls, people are like, hey, use our product. I'm like, dude, don't even talk to me. Like, there's only two vendors I'm possibly thinking about, right? Like, you've got to plan that junk out because you cannot just swap stuff on a dime because your policies and procedures lock you in to so much unless you've written it, all of them at such a high level that it just talks about everything generically. And if you did that, I don't know how well your assessment's going to go because everything's going to be show me because nothing speaks to any relevancy about how you operate. And the assessors hate that to some extent as well. So it's a weird challenge.
And the main thing that we want to talk about too with the game of chicken is making sure that the people that are listening understand that comparing a CMMC Level 2 certified MSP, or more specifically, what I want to say is an MSP that is choosing to run on CMMC as their main, product, I guess, that they're driving. So, they do MSP support, but they are CMMC. That is their foundation versus somebody who is an MSP that you work with right now and can help you with CMMC, because they are already your MSP. Okay. So comparing those two things is like comparing apples and potatoes. And we're going to talk about why we say that. And again, like I said before, there's no negatives towards the MSP, that you have right now because it's not the same thing. I want to say that I love apples and I love potatoes, very much. So you can love both. So let's talk about, I just didn't want to get hate mail, so I just wanted to clear that up. Okay. So let's talk about the first thing that honestly Lawrence was really touching on and I think cannot be stressed enough is time. So going down each one of these routes is going to take time. But I think you touched on something, Lawrence, which is very important, is the maturity that you had to go through or the learning of that maturity as an organization for CMMC. It took you time and effort. So let's talk about when you choose an MSP that hasn't gone through that yet. They're going to have to go through that as well as helping you, right?
Very
there's
much.
going to be something happening in tandem where that MSP is learning about CMMC and how it affects them as your MSP, as well as trying to prepare you for CMMC yourself as the organization.
Well, and I would add even another dimension to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken for many years on the concept of shared responsibility. And right before it was something that was cool, before anyone was talking about it, before we were talking about supply chain risks, like this was a thing. And like as an MSP, I saw it, and I saw it kind of in a unique view. And I think the MSP community is starting to see that same unique view now. I give the background not to be braggadocious, but merely to say I've spent almost a decade considering this and experiencing this and trying to raise awareness of this supply chain risk concept and the resulting concept of shared responsibility. Very often what I see, and Bobby, to the point you made earlier, I too am in many peer groups, and like we'll speak about like their concepts of shared responsibility, and like even the most cornerstone document of having a shared responsibility matrix or a customer responsibility matrix, bring that up to most MSPs, and they say, yeah, we have something. Or you ask the question of, well, do you align your services to a defined security framework or service delivery framework like
Right.
IDLE? And right, many MSPs, even very high functioning ones, will say like, yeah, we do, like we have a thing. But going to Kaleigh, to the point, they haven't taken the time and they haven't had an operational imperative to really ground that, ground their practices into an absolute rigid alignment inside of a shared responsibility model, inside of that matrix that is aligned to some kind of standard, to some framework that is unflinching, that is outside of their control. They haven't had to do that. And so when they come into the CMMC conversation, well, the very first thing for suitability as an external service provider is a shared responsibility matrix.
Right.
And so if the MSP is having to figure that out while they're trying to get a client down the road towards CMMC readiness, there's a lot of lookbacks. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of this iterative work that is very foundational and fundamental to the resulting program, to the outcome. And that to me is where there's a lot of risk. And like Bobby, to your point, like tools and vendors are one thing. The MSP has to be willing to say, hey, like we filled our dance card out. We know that the vendors and our tool set is suitable and adequate inside of this framework to deliver a purpose, and we're not going to change it. Find our practices and our people and all of our written procedures and our written documentation to the same framework, and we're good to go.
Right.
So that then when they bring that to the customer, well, all of that is already built. Otherwise, they have to build that, and that's going to take time and confusion and effort.
Yeah. So I think maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, Lawrence, but so I guess sort of kind of what you're saying is the game of chicken here for the OSC's perspective is that they're not requiring the MSP that they're going to try to potentially just work with
Mm.
to build a responsibility that is clearly defined to the objective level.
Right.
And what that means is in the 171 alpha document from NIST that has 320 assessment objectives, and your matrix that says Lawrence during the onboarding process is going to do during the authorization of 311, Lawrence's responsibility will be shared. And the shared process will be after they've done their preamble things of background checks and training the people, because Lawrence can't do that. Lawrence is now going to go through and add them into the tenant and do these types of functions and activities, right? So that shared responsibility needs to be defined at the assessment level so that the assessor goes to look and they go, okay, I'm going to talk to OSC first, and then I'm going to talk to Lawrence next. And Lawrence is on the hook for this part. We were going through, like literally I had an assessment this morning that it went really well. And we finished early. So I was able to make podcast. I didn't think I was going to, so I was super happy. But part of the reason that it did that is because we had everything broken down to the assessment objective level. And so the assessors were able to get everything they needed so much quicker. We even had the documentation and the procedures and policies that are relevant to each assessment objective broken out. So because if you've not gone through assessment, you don't realize the assessors have to fill in a field for every assessment objective and list the policies and the procedures, right? So if you help them out by getting all of those ready for them, they can fill those in and they're like, oh, thank God, this made my job so much easier. And you think that's the kind of person that's going to give you grace when you need it. Hopefully so, because they're your assessor. Right? But so many times they play chicken with that and they just won't do it. And then they try to scramble at the last minute to throw this thing together.
Yeah.
And it can't be thrown together at the last minute. They have to really think about it. And so as an OSC, I would agree with you, Lawrence. Like, you have to go ahead and make that a priority and get that done.
Well, yeah, to be able to think, you have to have time, right? And so like it's actually literally impossible for your MSP when you come to them and say, I need you to help me get CMMC certified, and they're not a CMMC Level 2 certified MSP themselves and haven't gone through it themselves. They can't just magically just appear their customer responsibility matrix with the 320 assessment objectives on it. They have to now literally do it themselves. They have to sit down and do it. And it's going to take time. You cannot just say that that's not going to be there. It literally is. Like, you cannot make that up. So they're going to have to do that. And guess what? That customer responsibility matrix is awesome and great, and you need it, but they are bringing it for you. That has nothing to do with your SSP. Well, I mean, it does have stuff to do with your SSP, but that is not creating your SSP, which is a whole nother thing you have to create. And they have to help you with that because they're going to be doing a lot of the controls or parts of the assessment objectives that are going to be inside of that SSP. So you're going to have to work together to do that. So not only do they have to do their side, which I'm quite curious about how the billing is going to be for that, but I couldn't speak to that. And that's going to be the next topic. So there's that time that is the buildup of those things, plus just getting you ready yourselves as the OSC. Now, if you choose somebody who is CMMC Level 2 certified, guess what? You cannot blink and be at your assessment. They still have to do the work because you haven't done the work already. So the MSP that is CMMC Level 2 certified, even if you chose Lawrence, even if you chose Bobby, our team has to do the work for you. You do not miraculously just get to be CMMC Level 2 certified. So there is going to be time for both sides. But to acknowledge that it's going to take longer with an MSP that has not already done it is very important to note. And I'm not saying it again to bash the MSP. It's a shame that it took OSCs this long to bring up this conversation to many of their MSPs to even start thinking, oh my gosh, can I do this? Because I didn't know that I had to do this, And so it's time either way.
And one thing I wanted to go back to kind of like really foot something you said. And for those that are listening that may have not been through an assessment, and I think, Bobby, you kind of shone a light on this. Inside of, at the end of the day, CMMC is all about compliance with 800-171 Rev 2. So there's 320 discrete assessment objectives. And the best analogy I can make is that it's kind of like Connect 4. If you remember that game, Connect 4?
Yeah.
Right. I loved that as a kid. I don't know why, because I don't know, a little bit of like logic and tactile, but every single assessment objective has to be owned by someone. And when we're talking about this concept of shared responsibility, if the MSP has some portion of responsibility, well, they're like one row in Connect 4. And if the OSC has some portion, well, they're one row in Connect 4. And we have to line up every single assessment objective someone has to own. And they have to agree that they own it. And so, Kaleigh, to the point you made, it's not like that an OSC can put together an SRM, a shared responsibility matrix, and give it to their MSP.
Good point.
Right?
No,
Right? I've heard that. I have
heard that as
right?
well. Yes.
And that's not something that the OSC can put together and say, here, Mr. MSP, this is what I need you to agree to. The MSP has to put it together and give it to their OSC. And similarly, every tool, everything in their tech stack that they're using to accomplish any of the assessment objectives
Right.
that they say they're doing, well, that vendor has to say that they agree that they're responsible for that to the MSP. And so now we have these other third-party companies that the OSC may have never heard of. They don't know who they are, and they're present,
Right.
at least by way of documentation, in the assessment.
Right.
And if any of those assessment objectives, and 320 of them, it's a fairly long list, if any of those are not owned by someone in that ecosystem, it's automatically a not met. And I think that is when we talk about this game of chicken and the time. I mean, like you can look on almost any social media, and you will see MSPs asking the question, "Hey, and one of my clients came to me and they said, like, we need to get evidence for their CMMC Level 2 certification." And I think that's a great disservice to the MSP, because now the customer is saying, like, "Oh, you're doing all this stuff for us, right? So, like, give us evidence." And they have no idea what they're being signed up for, because they weren't the ones that gave the customer that shared responsibility model, that CRM and CMMC parlance. And so I think that's one of the elements in the game of chicken here, that like it's going to take time. Those things have to be agreed upon. And then we have this whole question of tool suitability. And I don't know about you, Bobby, but that, I mean, like you mentioned the point, like you go to a show and you have to put blinders on, because these vendors, they're the best thing since sliced bread, but they are entirely unsuitable for use inside of a CUI environment, much less if you have ITAR or export control data, right? That's another gear that you have to worry about on top of this. So it's interesting. Like this, it is a time-based and risk-based game of chicken that I think a lot of people are playing, and they don't know that even though they're playing the game.
And if you look at the consequence to those actions, so if the MSP plays the game with the OSC because they're like, well, they seem okay with it, and maybe I don't know what to charge, we'll just have meetings with them periodically and we'll just bill them for us to kind of work with them on it. Okay, that makes sense at a high level.
Yeah.
But when you realize, like, that's like saying, well, I was an amateur carpenter, you want your house, a whole extension added onto your house. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to help work with you throughout the course of the next year or two to get your house ready. And you've never done inspections. You don't know how to pull things and file them down in the city hall, and you're just going to wing it. And like no one would ever try to, most sane people would never try that. But that's sort of what an MSP is doing when they want to just sort of hold hands and kind of just marry their way through. And just because the OSC is okay with it doesn't mean you're not playing that game of chicken. You are, because then what ends up happening is they realize, oh, I need to be at the finish line by the end of this year, for example, let's just say, because I have a contract that says I have to have that. And can we speed this up? And you're like, I don't know, because I don't know what the finish line truly looks like. Yeah. And you're screwed. Both of you are screwed. And either you're going to have to fully commit or eject as the MSP. And now the OSC's got to figure out who's going to be filling that space. Yeah. And it becomes
that is
really
so
crazy.
true. Yeah, that cannot be understated, because if you choose to go forward with an MSP that might not know all that it entails, when they discover all that it entails for their company as an MSP, they might give you the boot and not you giving them the boot. And how long is it going to take for that boot to occur? And do you lose 6 months to just start over and end up having to find an MSP that is CMMC Level 2 certified or has that CMMC process already, and you just wasted that time, unfortunately.
We've had some MSPs that have realized this game of chicken, and they're like, I don't think that's fair to our client. We're going to go ahead and try to pass them off to someone that can do it. And a hats off to people that really care enough to do that. And I think that's great. But there are some MSPs that are like, hey, they're okay with me billing them and me taking their money, and it's not really my fault if they don't realize about their contracts. And we're just going to go ahead and ride this thing out and keep that client as long as we can to keep that monthly recurring revenue,
Yep.
knowing that this is going to come to a head. This game of chicken is going to, there's going to be winners and losers. The losers are the people that don't make that decision until that last minute. And you cannot get someone ready if you don't know what you're doing. And you can't just sort of work your way through it. I mean, it takes serious commitment. So you've got to really know that you're playing that game. I think the only way you can win a game typically is if you know you're in it. And so like realize you're in one right now.
And
So
you still don't even
sure.
always win one when you're in a game
Right.
and you know you're in a game.
Right.
So definitely not going to win it if you're not in it.
Yeah.
Well, and I think and Bobby, I've had the same conversation with MSPs on both sides of it, right? Where some are like, yeah, we got into this, and there's a whole new world of TLAs, and new 3-letter acronyms, and we don't know any of them, and they look scary, and so we're gonna like, that's not our business. It's not fair to the client. We're out. But equally, I've seen the exact opposite, where they have the same approach of, no, we're going to like keep riding this, and they view it as almost this limitless bucket of professional services hours, and that they're going to figure it out. They have really smart people, and they've always been able to figure this stuff out. But there's like I like to say that like your E&O insurance can't indemnify you against like committing a federal crime. And at the end of the day, that's one of the risks. You mentioned like the risks of this and like the winners and losers, and ultimately for the OSC and for the MSP, but ultimately the OSC, because they signed their name on the dotted line with these contracts, there are real consequences or real potential consequences for this. Yeah. And I was recently addressing a group of MSPs, and it was under the auspices of, hey, we want to pursue CMMC. So it was a group of MSPs that had self-selected, saying, we want to pursue this thing. Tell us how we can do it. And I asked one question, and I said, who has read DFARS 252, 204, 7012? And like 3 hands went up. And I said, who's heard of the DFARS clauses? And like the same 3 hands kind of sheepishly went up. And I share that here to say, like, that's the code of federal regulations that ties the OSC. Those are the contract terms that you may not even know that are applicable to you or you're playing in, and there are real consequences in that. And if as an MSP, if they don't know the parlance, they don't understand the risk, if they don't know that ignorance is a admittable defense strategy here, then that's disadvantageous for both the MSP and surely the OSC. And again, I think that's another dimension to this game of chicken, that there's real risk for everyone involved here. I know I have a great respect for the Department of Justice and the work that they do, especially through the Civil Cyber Fraud Initiative. And that has to be considered in this game of chicken too, that those risks exist.
Yeah. And the other big word that I want to bring up before we close, which is not a small one, cost. Obviously we said time. Other big question that everybody has is the cost of it. Now, both ways, you're not going to get rid of the cost of CMMC. And again, this is not like CMMC, this is bringing in the assessments and the certifications and whatnot, but this was already supposed to be incorporated in your costs as a company for many years. Okay, so this is not CMMC bringing this cost. Really, the only cost that was brought were the assessments themselves, and then service providers realizing, holy crap, my regular company cannot just do this. So their costs change, right, to adapt, which goes into what I was going to mention first, which is if you're going to compare an MSP that is CMMC Level 2 certified, that has a CMMC process that you would go through, versus an MSP that's more on the commercial side, their prices are going to be different. I hope to God their prices are different because they should be.
They should
I
be.
mean, they're going to be different. They're going to be doing different services, different activities. And so if you're one comparison for staying with your MSP and going with an MSP that is CMMC Level 2 certified and has a CMMC process is the cost, you're going to go with your current MSP that is commercial every time.
Every day. Yeah.
Every day. And there's a reason why they're cheaper and there's a reason why they're different costs. And guess what? By the end of the line, I would not be surprised if it ended up being about the same cost because that MSP realizes the time and effort that they're going to take doing this with you that they didn't realize up front, but they still have to do it. Like they still have to take this time. They have to train their staff on this now to do it. That's going to be, I mean, CCPs and CCAs are not cheap. We've had to hire them. So we know that already. And that's why our prices reflect that. They don't. And they're going to learn it, you know? And so there is just this part in this process of understanding why the costs are different and they should be different, right? And so, Lawrence, what is your perspective on that too, as well, from an MSP that's gone through this and seen the cost of it?
You hit the nail on the head. The amount of time. So right there is a value for knowing the answer to the question, right? So there is a value for that. But besides that, I mean, we spent years and many hundreds of thousands of dollars on ourselves. We have a very different set of tooling.
Right.
So the tools that we bring to the table, your point on CCPs and CCAs, right? We just like you have sent your people through classes. We have ongoing certification, ongoing professional education. The culture of this is very different, and so like all of that is reflected in the cost. But the other thing, and this is something that it's an unpopular opinion, so I'm just going to say it. If as an MSP, why are we pursuing CMMC? Why as a nation are we undertaking this initiative? Why risk disrupting the entire defense industrial base for this thing? And that is to stop the wholesale theft of American ingenuity that has been happening for a couple of decades now. And it's not been happening through the big primes. It's not happening through the Boeings and the Lockheeds, right? It's happening through the small businesses that are inside of those supply chains that have pinky promised that they're doing this stuff for almost 10 years, right? I mean, CMMC and these deforest clauses go back to 2017. So they're not new. But the whole reason we're doing that is to stop the wholesale theft of American ingenuity. And if what we did previously worked, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Right? If the MSPs had adequate protection and the defense contractors agreed to implement the controls that they already said they were going to do, to your point, right? If everyone was already like, if status quo was good enough, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. We have seen the wholesale theft of American ingenuity. We have MSPs that are being targeted now. And that's really where the unpopular opinion is. Like, if as an MSP, you have clients that are in the defense industrial base, then nation state threat actors are targeting you. They understand that you and your tooling are a weak link in this, and they are targeting you. And as an OSC, if you don't think that they're monitoring, like nation state threat actors are monitoring your LinkedIn posts and your people, and they understand the relationships that you have, right? You are very misinformed, I believe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I say all of that to say that it's going to be more expensive because the risk that as an MSP that we're taking on, like, we understand that our systems, our tools, our people are absolutely targeted by nation state threat actors.
Yeah.
And we have to gear up and skill up ourselves to be able to detect those things and stop those things.
Yes.
And our level of preparation, our level of readiness is vastly different than that of a commercial MSP because they don't have the same risk profile that someone in the CMMC space is. I mean, just saying we're in CMMC means that we are raising our hand publicly and saying, we have defense contractors. If you target us, you're in the defense industrial base.
Mhm.
And so we have to have the capability and skills that are very different. So I'll get off my soapbox, but all that said, yeah, it's a different business.
Yeah.
It's just a different business.
Yeah. If that doesn't make you pee your pants a little, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, to
Mhm.
be honest. I mean, it does for me. I feel like it should. And that goes back to like what I was saying about cost and what we were all saying about it and the time. It's there's a difference between knowing the answer, like what you were saying, Lawrence, already to that question, or having to learn it later down the way, you know? But
Yeah, or
that
even
is the
like Bobby, like you're just in the conversation here, you very casually were like, oh, by the way, there's like 320 assessment objectives, 100 controls. Here's how they work, right? I mean, you teach this stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, as a provisional instructor, which is weird to still say provisional because they
uh,
haven't come out with the CCIs yet. But I would like to also add on a little bit to the cost, the game of chicken, where I think the OSC falls into the trap when they're working with the MSP is they're like, I want to hear the answer that I want to hear. And a lot of that is tied to cost because they are terrified about how much additional cost they're looking down the barrel of doing because they have not appropriately done all the controls they needed to do. So because of that, they are desperately grabbing any foothold that is going to hopefully give them the answer they want to hear.
Mhm.
And if that local MSP can tell them what they want to hear and they hoping that they're going to say the words that they want to hear, they're like, oh, okay, we've solved this problem. Let's move on and take care of the other things. But what they don't realize is they've just punted the can further
yeah.
in most situations.
Yeah.
We even, this is so dangerous. We even saw a company that is not level 2 themselves provide a service now that they can then take MSPs so they can keep their clients and coach them and their clients to get level 2 ready and pass their assessment and help it. And they're like, you don't need to get your level 2. It's fine. We'll coach you. We'll go through. And I'm just like, that is the worst idea ever. You have two parties that another party is coaching that don't have any real idea of what they're signing up for. And you're going to somehow move them through this process that is extremely difficult, the most difficult process I have ever gone through as an MSP provider. And let's just say that you happen to magically hit the dart on the bullseye and you got them through it and they passed. What about the maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Literally the week afterwards, is their access control database going to be totally wrong? Is the patching level of those systems going to fall off? And when you see you in 3 years or when DibCAC shows up
When
to
DibCAC
find
shows up,
their environment, in case you don't know who DibCAC is, it's basically kind of the IRS equivalent for compliance. They show up and they say, hey, you have these requirements in the DFARS like Lawrence was talking about. We want to see if you're in, and you've got 90 days roughly before they show up. They give you a notice and they'll walk through and do a high assessment and evaluate where you're at. And if you said that you've affirmed that you've been doing it and your stuff is total trash, if you don't keep it in maintenance, you probably won't have 90 days time frame to get it corrected before,
right.
Uncle Sam shows up to get things back in alignment again, if it's
Yeah.
just a total train wreck. So it's just, you've got to think about not just helping the client get certified, but continuing to maintain them. And that cost is no joke.
Mhm.
And when you go to work with a company, you don't want to TMU it when it comes to CMMC, right? You don't want to just be like, oh, let me just, let me get this, car for $80 on Temu. Of course it's going to be a matchbox that's going to show up. It's not going to be a real car. What the crap are you talking about?
It looks great on the website.
It looks really good.
Great.
The AI
Yeah.
picture online is so good.
Is fire, right? But no, it's not going to be what you're looking for. And so that is just sort of that reality
Yeah.
and so what ends up happening, we've seen it multiple times, and it's going to be a story I'm sure you've probably had experience too, Lawrence, and it's going to play out sadly a lot this year.
Yeah.
Companies that tried to grab for the cheaper, they're going to pay a lot for that cheaper solution. realize it's not going to work. Now they've got a shorter time frame and runway. They're going to have to pay more to hit that time and runway
done
to be able to keep
faster.
those contracts. And they're going to end up paying double the 3 times what they would have paid had they just accepted that it's going to be more and paid the cost from the beginning. And ultimately, it would have been a much cheaper and safer run for them. And now they're going to have to speed run it at 3 times the cost if they can.
Yeah, if they can. If
And
they
it
can get
is that's what they're looking down that barrel of chicken.
Mhm.
And so many companies are playing it, and I'm scared to God they're going to lose. And there's going to be a lot of great mom and pop shops that are small businesses that are just going to go out of business, or they're going to have to turn to their upstream contractor and say, "What the heck can we do?" And they'll probably buy them, or they'll just go out of business, or both, a mixture of both.
Yeah.
And it's going to start to play out, sadly, a lot this year and next year.
Yeah.
So don't get
Agreed.
caught up in that game of chicken. Be safe.
Yeah. And as you can tell, guys, there is a lot that we could even talk further about. Like, I mean, with this, I have to close this, unfortunately, because we're out of time, but we could keep going. And all that to say, if you're going to Pack State Beyond and you're an MSP, please come
Yep.
to that, because that's going to be so much fun. We really want to meet you guys. We want to see, what you're seeing on your side as an MSP, going through this with some of your clients potentially. Also, I think, I guess if this is already posted, we've already gone to CMMC Midwest conference where we talked about this as well. Me and Bobby are going to that to talk about it there. So we're very passionate about this topic because, honestly, one, we would love if MSPs jumped into the space. They weren't half pregnant; they were full pregnant, and they stepped in and they actually took it seriously. And we had more providers that were doing this and doing it right. So we want that. And then also too, we want OSCs to succeed, and we don't want them to lose a contract because they lost time. And so we care about both of those types of businesses, and that's why we want to talk about this. Lawrence, thank you for taking the time to step on here and just talk your wisdom from your side and your perspective. I always love talking with you at conferences. So
fun.
guys, if you have the opportunity to talk with Lawrence at a table,
dude.
don't freaking miss out. Like,
Yeah.
talk to him because he will talk to you if you're at a conference with him. So please do not miss out, and check him out on LinkedIn, follow his stuff, and check out his website that'll be linked below, of what they do. They do great stuff. And make sure to tune in next Thursday. We always have an episode out every Thursday for another one of Climbing Mount CMMC. But until then, guys, as always, just remember to keep on climbing. See you guys.